Welcome back to Baseball FPL. Thank you all so much for the support over the last couple of weeks. It's been great interacting with you all on X, but also reaching my first 10 subscribers. In today's video, I want to chat about, the current game week transfer targets that are coming up into Gameweek 31, and the big one also being Haaland and how people are essentially going to play that. So, look, to start things off with, started the game week at about 16.7k after that first night of Chelsea and also having Enzo blank, but Palmer, the likes of João Pedro, who just keeps scamming points. I was down to 27k and thought it's going to be a massive red arrow, especially from being 7k a couple of weeks ago. But I had a partial recovery. I went a very unconventional 5-4-1 setup this week, and for Virgil van Dijk owners who have held on to him, he finally came back and rewarded us for all the pain and misery that he's put us through with a 17-pointer. He got essentially everything he could have in a goal, a clean sheet, defensive contributions, and also max bonus points. So, bit of justice for Virgil owners. It's been good to finally have him return, and with some good upcoming fixtures, and their defence starting to look a little bit more solid, with Kanade seeming to be back at some of his best. I'm hoping that there's some points on the horizon for him in the coming weeks as well. The other one who returned was Guehi against City, finally keeping a clean sheet and him also getting a bonus. I think he was also one off DEFCON as well, which was unfortunate not to get the 9. But interesting how the 5-4-1 setup, very unconventional, haven't seen too many do it this season, has somewhat worked for me. This wasn't a strong week for me in regards to my team, but, it's a bit of a defensive bailout, and one that I didn't really want to spend a transfer on, given the fact that I'll be moving on some Chelsea assets in the next week. And the one that's been really disappointing, which I sort of worked out, it's ended up being a net negative 9 points, was I went Verts instead of Mbeumo. He absolutely dodged points against Sunderland with him hitting the post, and Mbeumo somehow getting an assist towards the end of that game there. So, has been a 9-point swing, not in my favour, but I guess that's just the way that it goes. Look, in the double game week, calling a spade, very disappointing. I think a majority, if not all people who went Gabriel for the triple captain. I know some went Rice, but I think everyone has hopped on Gabriel. Been very disappointing to see the 3-pointer in that first game. Although it was the tougher fixture out of the two, it now sets up some sort of pretty scary things for the Wolves fixture on Wednesday night. I think a minimum of 6 points is needed in order for it not to really be a disaster, meaning that Arsenal will have to keep a clean sheet. And Timber, again, just extremely disappointing with the points in which he's bringing in. I know that the underlining data is essentially somewhat there, but just hasn't been returning. And then I guess to flip-flop back to Gabriel, a lot of people think he was very lucky to stay on the field. Look, I'm a Liverpool fan and not a massive fan of Arsenal, but look, and I didn't think it was a second yellow, but could have easily been given. Yes, he would have served that over the weekend with the FA Cup, but again, that would have been more points deducted from him. Hopefully, Timber wasn't even in the squad for the FA Cup fixture, so I'm hoping that he's well rested, as with Gabriel, and they can actually come out and put in a solid performance to sort of save a lot of captains' weeks. So, look, moral of the story is I've captained Gabriel twice and hasn't really performed for me. Get his bonus route is really starting to slow down as well. I can't remember the last time we got bonus points. Clean sheets mandatory. So from this point of the season out, which I sort of said last week and went against it again, I don't know if I will be captaining another defensive option. So, look, I've had a lot of money tied up in my defence in recent weeks, and this week it sort of bailed me out a little bit, but I am wanting to move some of that cash out of my defence and back into other parts of the pitch. So as you can see here, I think the one that I'm eyeing off in replacement of Chalobah after the Burnley fixture is going to be Anderson. I actually owned him after we got the 5 free transfers after AFCON and sort of wasted that transfer and transferred him out with some fixtures that didn't line up. But as it stands, I think I'm going to be going to Anderson. I know a lot have gone to Hill from Fulham, from Bournemouth, but I think that, for 0.5 more expensive and my sort of cash reserves are looking pretty healthy at the moment, I think these fixtures heading into game week 31, especially that Burnley fixture in game week 31 and then wildcarding in 32 where he will probably exit my team, is probably the play at the moment. Money in the defence hasn't been a mistake. It's been sort of a phase to get me through the next couple or the last few game weeks. But I am now looking to distribute those funds elsewhere. Now, this has been, I guess, the big tension over the last couple of days, and something that's been spoken about is Haaland. And I guess this is this season's stress test. Yellow flagged, FA Cup absence, which I think he was going to be absent from that anyway. But that Newcastle fixture, I actually think would be a pretty strong one for him if he was to play, and I would definitely consider him as a captaincy option. But we just don't know sort of where that sits, and I think a lot of people are going to be eyeing that off over the next couple of days, because even prior to the injury, I think a lot of people were thinking about redistributing those funds elsewhere, which I think would be potentially a little bit too early to go on. But again, I was listening to Let's Talk FPL today, and he raised a really good point that, look, if you're going to buy back Haaland in game week 32, if you're wildcarding in 32, then it's only 5 game weeks away to sort of sell him and bring him back in. If he's going to miss one fixture, then there's 4 extra fixtures that you sort of know going out with Haaland. And if he sort of starts to come back and get fully fit again, then there's always opportunity to bring him back in. I personally, is probably because I'm trying to hoard transfers at the moment, erring on the side of wanting to keep him. And then, look, if I have to, I don't really want to, potentially going back to that 5-4-1 formation again for game week 27 to sort of maintain the disciplined approach as opposed to the emotional move. But the emotional moves are the ones that actually got me to the rank in which I am at the moment. And it's when I've actually probably tried to be a little bit too tactical that I've really started to slide down the ranks. But I am hoping that that patience will pay off in the form of a dead end into 31, wildcard in 32, and then setting myself up for the likes of game week 34. And then, look, the one in talking about emotional moves, I think many people will probably be in the same position as of recently, with the Verbruggen Dubravka combination worked so well up until probably about 3 game weeks ago. And I know that people don't like making goalkeeper transfers, but as you can see in the last 6 games, Kelleher has outscored Verbruggen by double, and I don't even think Kelleher's had that great of fixtures. With Kelleher having great fixtures upcoming, I know everyone's been speaking about the reliance and the data behind Brentford's defence, which doesn't look great. However, I know he saved a couple penalties, but I'm very close to considering a goalkeeper transfer. As I've sort of run the numbers, and I think there could be sort of a net 10 to 12 points over leading into game week 31 if I am to make this move. So something that I'm eyeing off. I don't know how it's going to end up, but I think when it comes to this stuff, you really have to weigh up how many transfers you're going to have going into 31, and transfers are now going to be a pivotal light. That if you're looking at Haaland replacements and a change in structure there, and you might have to use 2 transfers if you're wanting to bring in Salah, etc., then goalkeeper may not be something that you focus on. However, I may go with the goalkeeper route and sort of back the midfield that have sort of done it for me over the last couple of weeks. And then thinking over the next couple of weeks and what's going to happen. Look, no secret when these are no longer, I guess, differentials that are and being thought about out in the market, really, because I think a lot of people are either going to be bringing in Sharda or Dango after this game week. I think I'm going to be going Enzo. I was originally on Sharda, but having watched Otara against Arsenal midweek, he looked incredible. Really down that left side was causing Timber a lot of trouble, and I think probably should have gotten more out of that game than he did, tying in with Thiago. And Thiago, again, another one that was sitting on my bench, and quite lucky that he didn't return. He could have had a couple goals and opportunities, especially the one with Mosquera. Mosquera did incredibly well to get back. However, the Brentford attack just looks incredible at the moment, and I think I'm going to be wanting a piece of it. Again, I still think that the best options are you and Buemos, and Rodgers somehow just keeps returning, but Rodgers and Aston Villa's run over the next 3 is incredible. However, I think I'm going to want to potentially go a little bit of a differential route, although I appreciate that I think a lot of people are going to be hopping on these assets. The key question for me at the moment is which route you go down. So that's it for this week. I will be coming out with a video later on in the week about my decisions and my transfers. Would love any feedback. Would love for you guys to give me a subscribe if you enjoyed, and always encourage people to leave a comment because I love sort of chatting about everything FPL. So thanks, guys, and I will see you next time.